This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
Girl, real talk. This whole "it's new year, time to reinvent myself" trash is not the vibe for 2024. You can find someone who loves you for you, as you are. You don't need to read a stack of self-help books, only eat sad salads, or start meditating at 5 a.m. to be ready for dating. So yeah, my advice is to download Bumble and find someone who embraces you the way you are right now. Let me know how it goes.
This is Central Texas Life with Ann Harder.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Central Texas Life. You know, this is a topic we've not really dealt with on this podcast, and that's youth ministry. And we're talking with an expert today, Bob Johns, who is a minister who's dedicated his whole career to working with young minds and young lives and shepherding these young people. And you are something of a rarity, which is, after reading your book, They Say I'm Crazy. It kind of hurts my heart that there are so few that choose to dedicate their lives to these kids.
Well, that's what happens in ministry. Youth ministry is tended to often be kind of a stepping stone to something else in ministry. You do it when you're younger.
Right.
And then you move into other more important, better paying positions, I guess you could say. But some people feel called to it for a lot. I mean, that's the way it's for me. In seminary days, I felt called to do youth ministry, and I just never felt called to anything else. So I kind of kept just kind of plugging along, and all of a sudden I realized I was kind of going where no man has ever gone before.
So how many years? You'll be retiring in the summer of 22. So how much more? Almost 4 decades, right?
Yeah, well, actually, I started in '76, so whatever that is, that's 46 years.
Oh yeah,
46 years.
Pushing 5.
46 years.
Decades. So what would you say in seminary? You kind of felt this. What was it about? Just the need you saw for truth to be sown into the lives of kids.
Well, there was this idea being bounced around that maybe youth ministry was a calling and not just a temporary place of ministry.
Just a job on the list
so
there at the church.
I said, well, heck, I mean, that's what I like doing. And so I was in my early 20s, and it was great. And so I just kept doing it, and I just never felt anything there was nothing else that was appealing to me. And so, when I hit my 30s, people started asking me, well, what are you going to do now that you've grown up? And I said, well, I'm going to keep doing this. And then I hit the 40s, and it just became kind of like accepted, because I just kept moving through it. I remember when I turned 60, I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm still supposed to be doing this. And I really I said, God, I really still enjoy this, but I still need to also be effective at it. I said, I need those two things. I need to enjoy it, but also need to be effective at it. I don't want to just continue to do youth ministry and because of generational differences that I'm not able to be effective at it. And, and God just continued to bless the ministry. It just kept growing and flourishing. And so that was cool, Yeah,
we need to explain First Woodway.
Mm-hmm. First Woodway.
Waco, or Woodway, where you have spent the bulk of it. You weren't always at First Woodway.
No, I was at 2 other churches before that. I was at a seminary church for 3 years, and then I was at a church in Burleson, South Fort Worth, First Baptist Burleson, for about 6 years before I came here.
Yeah.
So that's my ministry experience, those 3 churches. So getting ready to finish up 38 years here at First Woodway.
Okay, that's where I got the nearly 4 decades. I had heard that. Well, you wrote this book, They Say I'm Crazy. What prompted you to write a book? Now, you say it's not a memoir.
No, it's not. And the point of the book was, I said, okay, I had some friends who said, write a book, we'll get you in with our publisher to help maybe get it published. And so I said, I want to write a book, but I felt like that just about all the books on youth ministry had been written. But I said, but who's written a book about doing youth ministry for the long haul? All the way, for your whole life, use all your adult years working with kids, and no one's really written that book. And not many people have ever lived that life. And I thought, I'm the perfect person to write that book. And so it's not a book on how to do youth ministry. It's a book on how do you go the distance. Mm-hmm. What are some things you can do in ministry to continue to be fresh and relevant and effective, and to avoid, burnout and just those kinds of things. And so that's the whole point of the book, was to say, here, these are some tricks of the trade that I've learned throughout the years that have helped me stay relevant, because I'm crossing several generations now with kids.
At this point, yeah.
When I actually announced my retirement to the kids back in January, they all immediately went, no.
How can you do this?
And I said, shh, hang on, be quiet. I'm 70 years old. That's really old for a youth pastor, and they have no frame of reference because they've never known anything different.
Right.
The youth minister at Woodway's has been old.
Has always been you.
He's been old for a pretty long time, and
yeah.
And so I was trying to get them to understand that most everybody else out in the world, their youth ministers are younger and cooler and a lot prettier than I am, So helping them warm up the idea that it's time for a change. So.
Well, you have had the advantage, though, of being in a college town.
Definitely.
And a lot of great interns, I'm sure, have come your way
yes.
that are closer to the age of the youth.
Yeah, that's been very helpful. I've had just about all my colleagues, guys that were like my age, who felt the same way into calling. They've all been either sacked or pushed into other areas of ministry. I just felt real privileged. I was able to continue to travel on.
It is such a unique
this doesn't happen,
career path that you've had.
Happen.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons I was able to sustain it is because of Baylor and Truett and having access to all these kids. I have like 30 Baylor students who work for me as volunteers leading my small groups, and I have a staff of young guys and girls in their 20s who, it's kind of like, I've always kind of like imagined it like a ship, and I'm the grizzled little captain behind the wheel steering, and they're on the deck. All my first mates are scurrying about doing all the work, and so they kind of help keep us relevant and focused, and they kind of keep us moving in the right direction. It works out well.
It's not just the youth, the middle school and high schoolers, but you're also mentoring these young ministers who will go on and the effect you've had on so many lives just can't even be quantified, I don't think.
Well, it's kind of been kind of cool, like, over the last few years, a lot of the guys and girls on our staff at First Woodway are people who came out of our ministry who worked for me as interns, and that is kind of training ground for preparation for ministry. So that's been very helpful, because like I'll say, okay, I have this idea. What do you think? Is this dorky? Is this like too old? And they know that they have permission to be honest with me. Mm-hmm. We try to create an environment in our staff where we can really be open and honest about what we think. In fact, we have what we call the yes and principle. You can't put anybody's idea down, but you can yes and change the subject to something that's more relevant. So that helps us keep that in place. So it really works out well. It has worked out well, for sure.
Yeah,
it's been a blessing.
Well, now you mentioned earlier about questioning through the years of your ministry. Am I still being effective? And can you give me an idea of when that question really crept up? And you felt like
Well, you don't want to just use numbers as a qualifying aspect of it,
right.
but the numbers obviously speak true. As I was going through my 60s, I call it going through the 60s for the second time. The number of kids that we were reaching just continued to grow. We were taking more and more kids to camp than we ever did before. Yeah. And so you're like going, okay, well, it's still working. If I ever felt like that it was starting to slide, that's when that would have not worked for me. I wouldn't have liked that if I felt like the ministry was suffering because of the fact that it was time for new leadership. And even now, it's been amazing because COVID just really just knocked the wind out of our sails. Yeah. And it was just almost in some ways almost kind of rebuilding the ministry, not to the point that it really wasn't. We still had a good core, but it was just like so many things slipped, and we just really put our nose to the wheel and just got after it and just worked hard to kind of build it back up. And so,
yeah, how did you stay connected with the youth during those days of when we were kind of locked down for quite a number of weeks?
My staff and I said, we're not going to just hunker down. I felt like so many people were just like, we're just going to just, hunker down and just weather the storm. And I said, we're going to keep this ministry going. And so like we used we started putting together a weekly called WNL Online, where we were putting it, talks with music and testimonies and stuff like that. And it was like producing a television program every week. But we just stayed after that, and then as soon as we were able to start meeting, we started meeting the best way we could and worked hard. And we had to cancel so many things, which was so frustrating. Over the past 2 summers, we had to cancel 5 mission trips. And we had to cancel camp one summer. Those are they were so devastating to the momentum that we try to maintain. Mm-hmm. And so we were able to do that. And I feel like I said, I think this is going to be my last thing I'm going to do before I hang it up, is I'm going to help put this ministry back on course before I turn over the keys to the next person, to lead it. So we were able to accomplish that. So that's been cool. It's kind of been a cool way to finish up as I ride off into the sunset, to say, here it is. The ministry's back running full steam. And but it was a lot of work, man. In fact, our staff and I laughed about how much harder it was working during the COVID, because if you're going to continue to do ministry and be effective at it, there's a lot more work involved in it.
Well, and I think churches are, all facing, for all ages that attend, it became a lot easier to stay at home and watch it on TV. And the fact that folks are coming back is important, but especially so for kids. Because one thing you said in the book is that kids come attached to kids. And that is kind of a key lesson that you explain that, if you would.
Well, I'm encouraging young ministers who work with kids to understand that is a principle that's always been true, because you might think you're the coolest youth minister in town and got the best program, but generally kids come attached with kids. They go where their friends go, and so that just happens. And so you try to take the ego out of the equation. And just look at the bigger picture about us. We're trying to build the kingdom of Christ, not little kingdoms. You know? And so if I have a kid,
and that's a pretty mature way to look at it.
Right,
and
and sometimes it's hard when you're still trying to build your ministry and you're focused on numbers and for you to see the bigger picture, which is for me to call a youth minister in another church and say, hey, listen, this kid is not connected here, but I know he's attached with some of your kids.
Your kids, yeah.
Man, get him involved. I'm all for him getting involved and being discipled more than him just coming to our church.
Right.
And so that's that's an encouragement to younger guys, and I've really many times a new youth minister in town at some church will call me and say, my pastor says I need to have lunch with you. And so
you seem to know how to do it.
So we'll have like a 2-hour lunch, and I'll just pour into him or her, and it's I really enjoy doing that. And you can just tell her, I go, oh wow, that's true. I hadn't thought about that. And that's one of the principles. I said, listen, man, take your ego out of the equation and really think about what's best for kids.
Yeah.
So that's what that means.
Yeah. Kind of along that line in a way. you do quote Stephen, is it Covey or Covey? So
Covey, I think.
Covey. Anyway, his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yes.
And one thing you quote is begin with the end in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of that same, we may be losing this young person, but as long as they're plugged in over at Highland or whatever, that's
yeah.
a good thing. Or wherever they can get that ministry.
Right. Yeah. I had a situation where a guy at a sister church was using some of our video equipment, and he was editing his Disciple Now video, and he asked me a question, so I was helping him with it, and one of our girls popped up on the video, and when he saw it, he went, "Oh no!"
Uh-oh.
And I said, "Is that Kelly?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "She goes to your church?" "Yeah, she's real involved." I said, "That's fantastic."
Yeah.
Because we've never been able to get her connected here.
Yeah.
And he said, as a young minister, he said that just had such an impression upon him.
Yeah.
Because he was expecting me to be upset about it, and I was just the opposite. Was just, no, I want her to be involved and have community and be discipled and be with kids who share her values. And I mean, that's great. So
yeah. Well, over the years, I know you have seen a lot of change in the things that young people are dealing with. And when we come back from break, we're going to talk about that because it's really making life difficult for the young people and for those who want to minister to them. So we'll be right back.
Girl, real talk. This whole it's new year, time to reinvent myself trash is not the vibe for 2024. You can find someone who loves you for you, as you are. You don't need to read a stack of self-help books, only eat sad salads, or start meditating at 5 a.m. to be ready for dating. So yeah, my advice is to download Bumble and find someone who embraces you the way you are right now. Let me know how it goes.
And we were back with Bob Johns, who has written a book, They Say I'm Crazy. He's spent almost 50 years in youth ministry. His calling has been to speak truth into the lives of young people. And it seems like a simple thing, but you really are going against the flow in choosing that career path.
Yeah, that's just it's definitely unique in that regard for sure. So,
but over the years, so many pressures that kids have to face. I remember when I was, in a youth group, it was like, oh, who was smoking pot or that kind of thing, and then it's just accelerated to. And now it's social media,
now it's about who's smoking pot.
Well,
I
guess that's right.
That's never going
But if
away.
they're in Colorado, I guess they can do it legally. Anyway, but the things that kids are having to deal with because of social media, just talk a little bit to that. I know First Woodway recently had an expert in that come to talk to parents and grandparents about that very thing.
Well, I have a chapter in a book called "The More Things Change, the More They Remain the Same," and the whole point of it is, as I work through the whole history of my involvement with the youth, how there's been so much change, but it still remains the same. It's the same issues as far as identity and dysfunctional families and pressures, mental health issues. But the one thing that almost in some ways discounts that phrase has been social media. Yeah. Because it has had such an impact. The impact it's had upon our culture in general, not just kids, but everybody, has been immense. And
at lightning speed.
And we don't even know what to do about it. We don't. It's like a conundrum. We don't know, okay, it's there. What do we do with it? So we use it, but then at the same time we understand it's just having so much, so much devastating effects on kids' lives,
Yeah.
The thing about it is that used to be when you grew up, you weren't really sure how you measured up socially. You kind of may have some ideas, but now you can see it visually. You can see oh, those are all my friends are out on Friday night, and I'm not with them. What did I do?
Yeah, or
wrong?
so and so had a party, and that's all over.
Yeah.
Their Facebook page or whatever they use. Facebook may be totally passe for kids now. I don't know.
Yeah, they don't do Facebook.
They don't do Facebook. As soon as mom got involved.
Yeah.
But yeah, those kind of things, they're just not equipped emotionally, I guess, to deal with it as maybe an adult would go like, oh, well, I had other things to do that night or whatever,
Yeah.
And kind of like you, well, I'm glad they had a good time at that party, whatever. But no, for a child, that's not necessarily how they internalize that.
Yeah. Well, they're scrolling through Instagram or Snapchat or whatever, and they're seeing these people who have these what you call Instagram perfect lives, where they take the picture over and over again, they get it just perfect, and this is my perfect life, and this is my these are all my friends, and this is great. So they're kind of curating their life through social media when it's not always the truth. They have the same struggles. They're still lonely, and that's a big deal. Is how do kids deal with loneliness because they can't handle it, so they want to fill every waking hour with stimulus. That's why they scroll endlessly through their phones, through social media, or watch YouTube videos or whatever. And that is a real lesson we're trying to teach our kids. I say, listen, don't try to fight against loneliness. Embrace it and allow it to teach you about solitude. So it becomes a spiritual discipline rather than something that you're afraid of.
That you dread.
But how to do that is difficult,
You have to be taught.
Yeah, we were actually been talking about that very thing this spring in our small groups with our kids, about the idea of turning loneliness into solitude and figuring out how to do that. Because if loneliness is something that you're just an all-out effort to try to avoid at all cost, then you're trapped because you can't get away from the media. You can't get away from the phone because it's just the only thing that helps you deal with the loneliness, So it's a conundrum, and it's not just a kid problem, It's like everybody. The last thing they do before they go to sleep is look at their phone. Yeah. First thing they do when they get up in the morning is look at their phone. Yeah. It's kind of like, oh, that's it, So it is an interesting thing, and we're trying to help our parents. Okay, what do you do with this? Because it's inevitable that you're going to give your kid a phone. It's inevitable they're going to be doing social media to some degree, but maybe you should try to wait till they're mature enough.
Is there a magic age? Do you recommend one?
Well, I think that different people have different opinions about it. It's almost like in junior high life, they almost have to have a phone now because that's how we communicate.
Yeah.
Through texting and whatnot. When's volleyball practice over with?
Exactly.
Stuff like that. Yeah. So some people would suggest, no smartphones until high school. Use a flip phone junior high. Mm-hmm. And then smartphones in high school, and they definitely know. Most people are saying no social media until high school, and even then it's difficult. But don't let junior high kids delve. Junior high is such a difficult time.
Oh, I know.
It's such a difficult time. It's when you start discovering who's popular and who's not, and you start having identity issues, and social media is not going to help that at all. It's going to only
no. Well, I love the fact that through your career, you wanted the kids in your ministry to know that you cared, and you would make the effort to go to lunch. I mean, can you still do that? You said back when you could do that.
Yeah, we can't do it anymore.
You can't do that anymore, which is really a shame. Yeah. Because that spoke volumes to them, and going to their sporting events or the school play or whatever. You had a little trick. Tell them what your trick was.
Well, sometimes I'll go to a choir concert or a play and just get there at the very end and then hang around the foyer and tell everybody how great it was,
Yeah, you
being
get
very careful that I don't lie. Using the right wording,
So. It was great.
Or I will go to a football game, and I'll get there after the game started, and I'll walk all the way down in front of the bleachers, real slow, like I'm looking up for somebody, and I'll walk all the way back, and then I'll just leave.
Yeah.
And everybody, hey,
But you were there.
Saw you at the game
saw
Friday
you at the
night.
game. Yeah. Well, I mean, but that does, over the course of, what they're doing, say that you care about their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just a job
Right.
for you.
Well, that's what with our staff and with our volunteers, we, if all they ever do, like our small group leaders, if all you ever do is just meet with the kids on Sunday nights, but you never get involved with them outside of that, your impact going to be not nearly as good.
Right.
Watching them play a soccer match or meeting a couple of them at Common Grounds for coffee or whatever. That's just that we call it contact work or whatever, just touching their lives outside the church, and then slowly the process becomes you're not just a small group facilitator, you're actually becoming more and more of a mentor. Like I've got girls who have leaders in their small group, and they're looking at some of these better girls, and they're like going, I want to be like that when I'm in college.
Right.
Because they're cool and they represent Christ so well. And so that's when that mentoring process starts right. taking place. In fact, all of our small groups are based on long-term relationships. We actually we can take a better freshman and put her with a group of freshman girls in high school, and there's a good chance they'll be together for 4 years.
For 4 years, and really develop
and then that's a
lifelong relationship.
Oh, yes. I mean, we've got adult relationships that go back to small groups from high school.
Yeah.
That have carried on into their 30s and 40s, which is kind of cool to have a youth ministry that keeps giving way beyond high school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, and I've seen missionaries leave from our fellowship that met in youth group, and kind of grew up under your ministry, and then go on, and of course that's just got to be so gratifying. But what about that individual who comes out of your ministry and then goes to college and seemingly loses their faith?
Well, there's a stat that's been around forever. It's like 65-70% of the kids who come out of our churches go off to college and will leave the church at least for a period of time, if not for good, which is a staggering thought,
Yeah.
And we're always like going, we've got to beat that. We can't be status quo. So we work hard, as far as making sure we're going to try to, these are the things we're going to try to teach these kids while we have them, as we're just trying to be, as we're trying to complement good Christian parenting. We're not trying to replace that. We're just trying to do some things to help that, because we want to do that, because it does happen invariably, and it's, that's getting worse. It's not getting better. Mm-hmm. What's happening with millennials before that, and now Gen Z is they're leaving the church in droves, and so we're like going, okay, well, we're hoping that some of these things will stick, Like I was talking with two of my senior girls the other night. We're getting ready to graduate and go off to college, and they had their Henry Nouwen book that we were teaching this semester on reaching out. And they both had it. And I said, you reading it? I said, yeah, I just read chapter 9. And then we started talking about some stuff in the book. And they said, yeah, I like that part about it. I like that part. And I was just like going, okay, I hope that sticks.
Yeah.
I tell all of our leaders, I said, they're not going to remember much of what we teach them, but hopefully they'll remember some things. And they'll also remember how you lived,
Exactly.
And those are the things that you hope those things will be sticky,
right?
Stick to their faith as they
because
go up.
Because they do have this newfound freedom when they go to college and test their wings and all that sort of thing. But if those underpinnings are there, if that foundation is there, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, I'll have a kid who will call me from college and go, I'm not sure if I believe this anymore, help, which I'm glad they did.
Right. You're the right one to call.
And then I immediately shoot them. I have a book I give to those kids, and I'll say, read this book. This will help you. And over and over again, oh, that was great, thank you. Or sometimes they just kind of keep sliding, because the influences are in their life right then. Because, you can go to a public high school and do great spiritually if you have peer support. Mm-hmm. You have other friends who are there who share your values and convictions. you go up to college and all of a sudden that kind of, you don't necessarily have that. You don't have mom and dad encouraging you. You don't have your youth minister there every
Yeah,
week.
the structure of your
That's all
life
gone.
in high school is gone.
And
Yeah.
you're on your own, and if
Yeah.
you make some poor pure choices, then
Yeah.
it'll all go down the tubes in a hurry, So,
Yeah.
so trying to figure out a way to beat that stat has been something that really has driven me throughout the years. Like we even with our seniors, we have a senior Sunday school class where we spend the whole year teaching them systematic theology and apologetics, and
So they really understand what they
so
believe.
that when they go
Yeah.
off to college, they have some good foundational things. And when they take their first religion class, and the professor, they're not even sure the professor even believes the Bible.
Right. Yeah.
They'll text me from class, said, everybody in my class is freaking out, and I'm going, oh, we talked about this in Sunday school. It's kind of cool. They felt
Good.
prepared for it.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, it's
try
important work.
Yeah, definitely. Just help them figure out a way for their faith to remain intact in a world that's trying its best to chip away at it.
Well, our time is about up, but I like to end these visits with it's a little questionnaire that the late, great James Lipton would use on Inside the Actors Studio.
Okay.
And so this is my take on it. What is your favorite word?
Favorite word? Well, that's a loaded question. How about chimerical?
Great. What does that mean?
With something that happens that you can't believe it could happen. It's just over the top. It's just like
Yeah.
only because of something miraculous could it ever happen.
That's a great word. That's great. Well, what is your least favorite word?
Actually, can I take it back on my favorite word?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Can I change it?
Sure.
Excellence.
Yeah. I'm glad you said it because you mentioned
Excellence,
that
yeah.
in your book about excellence and being something that is continually done.
Right, yeah. I think that in ministry, that's one of our core values, is we want to be excellent. We don't want it just to be, halfway done. We want it to really be as good as we can do. And that's why I tell my staff, like whenever we get back from camp and we're just worn out.
Yeah, exhausted.
just poured out. And here comes the next Wednesday we have our youth meeting. I said, okay, is it going to be excellent, or are we going to make it just kind of like sloppy leftovers? Just make it excellent.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have to dig in, and, even though you're pretty drained,
You're pretty
and just
tired.
figure out a way it happens. So excellence is definitely is a favorite word.
That's good.
And then the
Least favorite word.
favorite word would be the opposite of excellence.
Okay, just mediocrity.
Yeah, there you go. Mediocrity. That's a good word. Just not being committed to that process of we get to speak to kids every Wednesday night, and whoever speaks, that's expected that they're going to spend several hours preparing. They're going to have an outline.
Sure.
And we're going to take advantage of that 20, 25 minutes. We're going to make it count. We're not going to just fill it up with this fluff,
Yeah.
or just fly by the seat of your pants kind of stuff. So.
Yeah. What turns you on then, creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Well, I love the creative process for sure. That is something I'm very committed to. We work hard to have creative elements in our ministry that make it special. That's the thing that goes first when you're doing week in, week out, because it's easier to just take, the easy path and not really work hard to do something that really helps create the environment that helps the kids notice it's something special. So we brainstorm in our staff, and we bounce ideas around, and we give ourselves time for it. You can't just say, okay, we're going to be creative for the next 15 minutes.
It doesn't really work that way.
You got to go, okay, we're going to brainstorm. We're going to bounce. There's no bad idea. Let's just keep talking, just say it out loud, and all of a sudden it all kind of, the synergy takes place, and pretty soon you come up with the idea.
Yeah.
This is the idea that we're looking for. This is the thing that's going to be exciting about this. And so that's I love the creative process in that regard, and I'm really committed to it for sure. And I think that's one of the things that's helped keep our ministry, on the edge of just being effective, because it really is excellent, and it is committed to the creative process. So that's really encouraging. I like that.
Well, then conversely, what turns you off creatively, emotionally, or spiritually even?
I would say the the for me it's logistical. I'm that's why I have a great administrative assistant who loves that and is good at that. I just give her a big old stack of papers, say, "There, organize that," because I'm not really into that,
Yeah.
But it has to be organized.
It has to be done.
If you take, if you take hundreds of kids to camp, that's just logistically, there's so much involved in that. And so I get to kind of lead the parade to camp, but she and her staff members are behind the scenes, getting it all organized and all the spreadsheets and all the forms and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So,
all the name tags made, all the
Yeah.
things that have to
and
be
that's all
done.
I always tell people. I said, listen, you don't have to be that well organized. You just got to be committed to the fact that it's got to be organized.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to joke. I said, I always get up in the morning and I look in the mirror and say, Bob, you're not organized. What are you going to do today to compensate for it? And so I do. I make lists and I stick with them, and I make
Good.
sure I delegate and make sure it all gets done.
That's good advice for,
Yeah,
for anybody that
'cause,
struggles with that.
Yeah, because if you're not, then you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. What sound do you love the most?
What sound? Music.
Okay.
Mu-
Yeah, you're pretty hip on
Music.
all kinds of
Music is-
music and
Yeah,
and
music is. I feel like my whole life has been a soundtrack. I got to do a sabbatical a few years ago in Oxford, England, and every morning I would actually plan out my playlist as I walked around the River Thames, and
oh wow.
and listen to different music, Beatles and David Crowder and
Yeah.
Steely Dan. I'm all over the map. I'm not just.
I know, but I
I'm not
kind of
just-
suspicion that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm kind of like I'm into good music, not just.
Yeah. So what is your least favorite sound?
I guess negativity. People who are seeing the glass as half empty.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could translate it into a sound, but it's just words.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Kind of bringing you down.
Yeah, like I have a friend who has just always struggled in ministries. Everywhere it's went, it's not going well for him. And I just said, "Do you think there's a common denominator here? It's because you're a whiner, You
Yeah.
you're just always negative. You're just
yeah,
like
yeah.
you just can't see the bigger picture,
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff is kind of I don't struggle with it. I'm not geared that way at all. But whenever I have people in my life are that way, that's kind of a negative. It's
Yeah.
a turn off for sure.
Well, we know you're committed to youth ministry, obviously. But what other profession would you have liked to have tried?
I would have liked to have been a sideline reporter for NFL football games.
I think you mentioned when we got a little down about church work. Well, maybe what would it take to be?
Yeah, like going in the locker room and interviewing Cowboys or Rangers or
That would be
Mavericks,
fun.
or I mean, obviously the thing I always wanted to be was a rock and roll star, but I just wasn't good enough to be that. So
Well, okay. So what profession do you know you would not want to do, no matter what?
Children's work. I love youth, but at children's work, working with
That's
kids.
another calling.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
For sure.
we have a great children's minister at our church. She's fantastic,
Oh yeah,
but I would not want her job to say,
isn't that funny?
yeah.
It's
But then she would want my job, so it's kind of
what a difference time makes. Just a little time
Yeah.
in the lives of those kids. Well, then finally, I think I know the answer to this, but what do you want to hear God say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well, I mean, obviously, well done, good and faithful servant for sure. That's definitely one thing for sure.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's what he'll say. It's kind of cool to look back on your life and just go, wow, what a blessed life. I'm going to miss it so much.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm curious as what retirement's going to look like for me because I'm kind of a little bit nervous about it because I've crossed paths with thousands and thousands of kids.
Yeah.
And that's a blessing for sure.
Yeah. Well, it has.
Yeah.
You say, they say I'm crazy. You're anything but crazy, Bob Johns. Going the distance, though, in youth ministry, and that's exactly what you've done. And we appreciate you going the distance here on Central Texas Life. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for being with us. Join us again next time.
Central Texas Life with Ann Harder is part of the Rogue Media family. Be sure to check out our other shows at roguemedianetwork.com. Please rate this show 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Join us again soon for more Central Texas Life with Ann Harder.